Well, Medicare recipients all across the Bay Area have been bombarded with shipments of COVID-19 tests they never ordered.
And they have tried to stop it by complaining to Medicare. The folks have requested, in fact, that these unwanted tests not be covered by Medicare funds, but so far nothing has changed. Our consumer investigator Shannon Behnken first told us about these unusual shipments last month, and she continues to dig for answers.
Keith, Stacy, I want you to take a look at this. These tests were sent to one person's house. If Medicare is being billed for something you didn't order, it's fraud, and taxpayers are getting ripped off. So I went to the U.S. Assistant Inspector General to find out what's being done about these bogus claims. I know you're investigating the criminals, but are you investigating the people at Medicare who continue to pay these bogus claims? Before we get to that, let me explain how we got here.
This one is from Pompano Beach. Well, here's one from Illinois. Just ridiculous.
Robbie Baxley is one of dozens who called Better Call Behnken to investigate an influx of mysterious shipments of COVID-19 tests. His mother has received more than 50 test kits she didn't order, and Medicare keeps paying.
I've asked them if we could flag my mother's account, so if it's a COVID test, to just deny, but they say they can't do that. This one is 96, they pay 94.
Every box has 2, so, I mean, your mother will be testing every day.
I know.
Every other week or something, I get 2, 3, 4 tests in the mail.
It's infuriating to Al Ravenna, who used to investigate Medicaid fraud for a living, but now he can't put a stop to the tests he's receiving.
They just get that Medicare number and they just bang it, and as long as they keep getting the checks, they're going to keep doing it.
You may be wondering, how do these labs get your Medicare number? And why so many tests right now? Numbers are stolen through a data breach or just tricking you into forking it over. Medicare announced it would stop paying for the free COVID-19 tests as of earlier this month. Representative Kathy Castor says that fueled a last-minute shipping spree.
It sounds like they're dumping their inventory right now, billing Medicare, and they should not get away with this.
Castor followed up with this letter to federal regulators citing my reports and writing, I urge the department to act swiftly and strongly by not reimbursing these companies. So that brings me back to the OIG Assistant Inspector General for Investigations, Scott Lampert. So the viewers that have contacted us are concerned that they say they call, they complain, they don't hear anything. Are their complaints being taken seriously?
Every complaint we receive, whether it's on the phone, via mail, or on our website, is taken completely seriously, and we try and do our investigations as thoroughly and efficiently as we can.
Last month, the Department of Justice charged 18 people with COVID-related fraud, including 2 people in Florida, accused of buying Medicare numbers and submitting over $8.4 million for COVID tests. Do you expect additional arrests?
So I can't comment on that, but I will say that we have an ongoing number of investigations in this area. It certainly has our attention, and we are committed to stopping all instances of fraud involving over-the-counter COVID-19 test kits.
As for Medicare's culpability for paying despite fraud warnings, Lampert directed questions to other departments. Meanwhile, he recommends you look at your Medicare benefit statements closely.
If you don't recognize any of the services that are on that statement, call us up, give it to us. It helps us conduct our investigation.
As of May 11th, the federal government planned to stop paying for the free COVID-19 tests, and that should slow down the delivery of unsolicited tests. But the question remains tonight, how will these bills be handled, and will Medicare, as well as these crooks, ever be held accountable?
And you just brought over a few. This is a third of what you had over there that went to one family from one company, and they didn't want any of them.
No. Didn't order them.
And what's the government doing? Are they trying to track down the companies that keep pushing this stuff?
Well, they're supposed to be tracking down these companies, and Representative Castor is now pushing the government to do this. She's pushing for the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Medicare, to investigate these companies. I can tell you that the paperwork points to numerous companies in Illinois and in California, but I found one shipping address for a company in Hudson, and I went there today, and tomorrow I will be back here to show you what I found.
Wow, and these are all taxpayer dollars, so when people think, oh, it's just tests, it's not a big deal, what you've uncovered only scratched the surface. Can you imagine how many more are being sent?
That's right. The fraud investigator that we interviewed put it well. Nothing is free. It may be free to you, but it's not free to all of us, the taxpayers.
There's a price tag on everything, isn't it? Thank you, Shannon.
Her investigation continues tonight. Hi, Shannon.
Stacey, Keith, most of these kits are coming from Illinois, California, and South Florida, but we found some appear to have been shipped from a business in Pasco County. And when I didn't get an answer on the phone, I paid the place a visit. Robbie Baxley's elderly mother has received more than 50 COVID-19 test kits. And despite pleas to stop the shipments, Medicare keeps paying for the unwanted tests.
Just a total waste.
Dozens of Bay Area Medicare recipients have called me about mysterious shipments of unordered COVID-19 tests coming from faraway companies in other states and a local one.
Here's one from Hudson. Let's see what they sent us. And here we go.
Looks like there's an address for me to visit. With that, I hit the road to check out the company listed on the shipping label, Sun Health in Hudson. Instead, I found a business called Progressive Supplies Stat. The door says open 9 to 5, so I opened the door and did a double take. I found it blocked by metal shelving, and on the bottom was a familiar-looking COVID test. I heard voices, so I tried the back door. I could hear music from inside. No luck, so I tried to talk to workers unloading a truck. Some COVID tests have arrived at people's houses that they didn't order, and it has this address on it.
Well, I don't know anything about that.
What business is this?
Well, we have no comment. I'm not allowed to say.
Are you shipping COVID tests? Clearly, the workers were done talking. Later that night, I received an email from the company owner saying in part, "We are writing to inform you that Progressive Supplies Stat is a shipping and fulfillment center that serves its customers by providing packing and shipment services similar to USPS, UPS, and FedEx. We do not bill Medicare and never received a payment from Medicare for COVID-19 kits or any other product." I emailed follow-up questions but have not heard back yet. Here's what I found online. The company's website says nothing about a shipping center, rather that it offers orthopedic support products and includes testimonials from happy customers. Meanwhile, the Better Business Bureau has an alert on the company and includes complaints from consumers about COVID test shipments, such as, "My dad have enough for an army." Company response, "We have already sent out returned labels for all complaints." Remember, we went to this address looking for Sun Health, which lists the same address. Florida Public Records has no listing for Sun Health, but the Better Business Bureau lists Sun Health as an alternate business name for Progressive Supplies Stat LLC. I also responded to that email I just told you about, asking about any connection between the two business names. So far, I haven't heard back.
I know a lot of people are probably saying, good for you, Shannon, keep digging, because it's so frustrating for these people. I can't imagine. Not only did they not order them, they don't want them, and they know our tax dollars are paying for them. Can they get them to stop? Is there a way?
Well, people are very frustrated, Stacey, Keith. I have reached out to Medicare for these folks. These folks have reached out to Medicare themselves without success. And while federal regulators and investigators are now involved, this isn't over. So I'm going to stay on this to see if we can figure out who is really behind sending all of these unwanted tests, because people are fed up. Jen, Keith, I found this lab after I got a tip that it is receiving hundreds of returns of COVID tests that recipients from across the country are refusing to accept.
I've gotten 4 every month for the last 6 months.
Alvin Stex lives in Arizona, and he's sick and tired of a Florida laboratory sending him COVID tests he says he never ordered.
This company literally was shipping unwanted stuff to an unknown subject that never requested it.
His explanation of benefits from Medicare shows Mainstream Diagnostic Laboratory in Newport Richey has billed Medicare $144 each month since December, and Medicare has paid $94.08 each time, all out of taxpayers' pockets. Steck tells me each shipment comes with 4 boxes, each containing 2 COVID tests. He says he's called numerous times to tell the company to stop.
And I asked him, I said, why am I continuing to get these tests? At this point, I had 24 boxes. And she said, well, don't worry about it. She says, Medicare is going to quit paying for them, so we won't be shipping anymore. Well, then 4 days later, all of a sudden, I get 4 more in the mail.
A woman in New Jersey tells me Mainstream has sent her elderly father 12 boxes of kits, but his Medicare EOB shows the lab billed for 8 boxes he never received. I reached out to Mainstream Diagnostic Laboratory owner Rance Bradshaw to find out what's going on. Bradshaw acknowledged the lab is receiving a large number of returns, but declined to answer questions about why so many people are refusing the lab's shipments or how it gets its customers and their Medicare numbers. Bradshaw called me back hours later to read this statement. We only send COVID tests when requested. We handle each call individually and take patient consent seriously. If a patient calls to cancel, we immediately take them out of the system. Since I started this investigation, I've been hearing from people around the Bay Area and across the country who are fed up after getting unwanted COVID tests, all reimbursed by Medicare. What I've discovered is that this is a very complex issue involving numerous laboratories, fulfillment centers, and in some cases, doctors. The COVID-19 public health emergency, which was authorized to provide these COVID tests, ended May 11th. Still, some Medicare recipients tell me that they continue to receive these unwanted tests.
But you and I have both done this a long time, and we know if you follow the money, you will start to unravel what is really going on here, and I know you'll stay on it. But in the meantime, if people continue to get these unwanted tests, what should they do? Well,
I'm hearing from people every day, Jen, that want to know the answer to that. The owner of Mainstream Laboratories tells me that they immediately stop sending the test if the patient requests it. So start by calling the company and telling them to stop sending you these tests that you did not order. Then check your Medicare explanation of benefits carefully and frequently. If you see anything you did not order, call Medicare and report it. The Office of Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services wants to hear from you too, and I have a link in my story online where you can file your complaint.
Yeah, because you've been in contact with them as well. They know this is a major issue. All right, Shannon, stay on it. Thank you.
Keith, in order to bill an insurance company, a provider needs what's called a National Provider Identifier. This is known as an NPI number. That number is assigned to a person, so that is where I started my search. Alvin Stex's explanation of benefits shows Mainstream Diagnostic Laboratory in Newport Richey billed Medicare for 20 boxes of COVID tests, despite his repeated calls for the lab to stop.
And I asked him, I said, why am I continuing to get these tests? At this point, I had 24 boxes. And she said, well, don't worry about it. She says, Medicare is going to quit paying for them, so we won't be shipping anymore. Well, then 4 days later, all of a sudden I get 4 more in the mail.
So how does this happen? In order to bill insurance, a medical provider needs what's called a National Provider Identifier, referred to as an NPI. Federal records show Mainstream Diagnostic Laboratories' NPI is registered to a woman named Danielle's Valasis. I called Valasis about these bills, and she tells me she and her husband, Jose, sold the lab over a year ago, and that her NPI should not be used to bill for the lab. She referred me to her attorney, Eric Johansson. When reached by phone, Johansson said, "We're looking into the situation and don't have further comment at this time." Attorneys for the lab have not returned my calls or emails. So I kept digging. Pasco County court records show that in February 2022, Valasis and her husband sold the lab, which they had operated for years as a blood draw facility, to B&C Group, owned by 2 men, Rance Bradshaw and Leo Corrigan. In July, the Valasises sued all 3, claiming breach of contract, mishandling of finances, and that they weren't paid according to the contract. Court records show attorneys for the Valasises repeatedly warned the new owners to obtain their own NPI number, telling them federal law gave them just 30 days after the purchase to do so. In this December 2022 filing, the group objected to requests to show proof they had applied for an NPI, calling it overbroad and irrelevant. When I reached Rance Bradshaw last week, he issued a statement that said that the company only delivered COVID tests to those who request them. He declined to answer my questions about the complaints, about the lab and how the lab obtains these numbers and where they get these numbers from, and why previous owners of the NPI are having issues with these tests.
Every time you do this story and have an update, I mean, I feel like I need to get the popcorn out. I mean, there are plot twists after plot twist. It's incredible. What about the lawsuits with the owners and the people who own it now? I mean, where does that stand at this moment?
Well, Jen, we've been looking into that all day, and it appears that lawsuit is wrapping up. Court documents indicate a settlement has been reached, and the case will remain open until the conclusion of that settlement agreement. So this is going to keep going on for a while.
I can't wait for the update. All right, stay on it, Shannon. Thank you.